With the trade deadline passed, I've graded every Major League Baseball team's moves, and it's coming up next on Beat the Odds. Don't go anywhere. Hello, sports fans, and welcome back to another episode of Beat the Odds. I've graded every Major League Baseball team's deals coming out of the trade deadline. But now, before I reveal my grades, if you're a fan of this content, please smash that like button. And if you're new here and appreciate quality fantasy baseball insight, don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell so that way you don't miss an episode. Do you have a burning fantasy baseball question? Ask me on Q. Go to askmeonq.com/beattheodds, submit your question, and for a small fee, I will personalize a response and send it to your email. It's super easy to do, and it's a great way to get fantasy baseball advice while also supporting this channel. Now let's kick off this list with the Baltimore Orioles. They got a nice haul here of this trade deadline. Zach Eflin, Trevor Rogers, Sir Anthony Dominguez, Christian Pache, Gregory Soto, Eloy Jimenez, and others. It seemed as though the asking price was a little bit too high for a front-end starter, but that worked out to Baltimore's benefit as they didn't need to dip in too far into the robust pool of prospects to facilitate a trade. Eflin's going to slide into a mid-rotation spot. Dominguez and Soto is going to be useful out of the pen, and Eloy was essentially a gift and has the potential to be a huge producer down the stretch. I'm going to give the Orioles an A. Let's go to the Boston Red Sox. They got Luis Garcia, Danny Jansen, Quinn Priester, James Paxton, Lucas Sims. Having Danny Jansen on the team is going to be a big asset, but he's settling into a similar role that he had in Toronto. I think Boston may have given up a little bit to get Quinn Priester as well. Paxton is going to get absolutely rocked in Beantown, so I don't really see a clear ad here that's going to push the Red Sox up the leaderboard. I'm giving them a C+. Let's go to the Yankees. They got Jazz Chisholm, Mark Leiter, Eniel De Los Santos, Thomas Balboni Jr., Kelly Austin, and J.D. Davis. The trade getting Jazz is quite possibly the biggest fantasy relevant trade that happened. He may put up prime Curtis Granderson numbers for as long as he has pinstripes. He's going to be picking up third base eligibility too. They get an A based on that trade alone. Mark Leiter Jr. is also going to be useful in the pen. Moving on to Tampa Bay, they got a massive haul. Christopher Morel, Hunter Big, Ty Johnson, Dylan Carlson, Aiden Smith, Dylan Lesko, Homer Bush Jr., JD Gonzalez, the list goes on and on, Mac Horvath. They picked up a ton of huge prospects, and they have shown us how to make the best out of a selling situation. Dylan Lesko, Aiden Smith, Mac Horvath, Homer Bush, amongst others, these are all key prospects that are now going to be added to their farm system. The Rays did a phenomenal job on cashing in on the sellers market, and they get an A+ from me. Moving on to the Jays, they also got a big haul here, starting with Jake Blosh, Joey Loperfido, Will Wagner, Jonathan Clase, Yohendrick Penango, Charles McAdoo. There's a bunch of names on this list here. The Jays succeeded and traded away many of the players that they had on expiring contracts for a much-needed boost to their farm system. They were also successful in keeping much of their core intact. That Kikuchi trade was straight larceny, and the Yimi Garcia trade that was going to be bringing back a player in Jonathan Clase who could immediately fill the void left by Kiermaier. We're going to see if the Jays' retooling strategy pans out, but at least for this trade deadline, I give them an A. Moving on to the Chicago White Sox, they got Miguel Vargas, Alexander Albertus, Jurel Perez, Trey McGuff, Gerald Rosardo, like a lot of these names here. Corey Julks, I know. A lot of these guys here are pretty weak. Miguel Vargas is the only other real good name on that list. Really, with Chicago, I guess they're going to be focusing in on the offseason. They had incredible trade chips in Kopech and Fetty, and a sea of potential buyers looking for pitching help, but they only managed to secure Miguel Vargas and really not a whole lot else. Plus, they basically opened the door and let Eloy Jimenez walk out without a fight. So if they're trying to field the worst team imaginable to finish off the year, they may have succeeded. I'm going to give the White Sox an F. Moving on to the Guardians, they picked up Alex Cobb, Lane Thomas, and Spencer Howard. Lane Thomas might be my runner-up for the best fit on a new team behind Jazz Chisholm Jr. Whereas Jazz is going to see a massive boost playing at Yankee Stadium, of course. Thomas is going to get a lineup boost hitting in front of Jose Ramirez and Josh Naylor. Cobb's also going to be a nice mid to late rotation piece for this team as well. I'm going to give them a B. Let's move on to Detroit. They got a whole lot of nothing. Trey Sweeney is probably the best name out of this list here. They absolutely got fleeced for Jack Flaherty. The Yankees were also pursuing Flaherty, but backed out because of something in his medical records. With the last-minute timing of this deal, I think the Dodgers ended up taking a really low-risk gamble on a high-reward pitcher. Trey Sweeney is, like I said, he's kind of the only potentially useful middle infielder that they would have gotten in this trade. I'm going to give them, of course, an F. Let's go to Kansas City. They ended up getting Hunter Harvey, Lucas Urchek, and Michael Lorenzen, and Paul DeJong actually came along in the trade as well. They didn't get a really huge haul in the trade deadline, but they did address a major need for quality relief pitching by picking up both Hunter Harvey and Lucas Urchek. Paul DeJong may turn into a solid hitter near the bottom of the lineup, but I wouldn't really call that a win. And of course, Lorenzen's going to give them flexibility as a starter or a long reliever. These trades not too bad. It services a need here. I'm going to give them a B-. Let's go to the Twins. They didn't really do a whole lot. They picked up Trevor Richards from the Blue Jays, and that's about it. So it looks like the Twins are really unable to pull off any of the major moves at the trade deadline, and ended up picking up the reliever that has been struggling for the last month in Trevor Richards. This team can still contend in the AL Central, but they're going to have to count on some good luck when it comes to the health of their middle-of-the-order hitters, and of course a return to form of their ace, Pablo Lopez. Based on how things went here, I'm going to give them a D. Let's go to the Houston Astros. They ended up getting Yusei Kikuchi from the Jays, Caleb Ferguson from the Yankees, Luis Rodriguez, and Nick Hernandez. The grade that I'm going to give them, which is a D, is really, it all has to do with the massive overpay that they made for Yusei Kikuchi, who has been pummeled to an ERA of over 6.50 over the last 2 months. They did need another starter, but I think they may have been able to get more out of Jake Bloss to close out the year, and of course he got traded for Yusei Kikuchi. Ferguson's going to be a nice lefty out of the pen, but even he has had an off year. So really that D that I give him, that pretty much sticks for me. Let's go to the Angels. They got George Clausen, Samuel Aldegari, and a few other players here. Getting Clausen and Aldegari was kind of the small victory for a team that I thought would have been in full sell mode with really nothing to play for this year. You can't build a team around Mike Trout anymore. He is no longer a given to play enough games to impact the team. So I'm guessing that we're going to see more trades in the offseason. But at least for the trade deadline, it seems like the Angels didn't really step up to the plate. I'm going to give them a C. Moving on to Oakland, they got Will Klein, Mason Barnett, Jared Dickey, Cade Morris, Jordan Groshans, and Brandon Bielik. They picked up a couple of nice pitching prospects in exchange for a few desirable pieces, but really did little else to impress. But it's not really that hard to fault them. Given that Mason Miller, who was really the big trade chip here, he punched out a table, and of course the team is in enough limbo as it is with the eventual move out of town. So they didn't really do a whole lot this trade deadline. I'm going to give them a C. Let's go to Seattle. They ended up getting Randy Arozarena from the Rays, Justin Turner from the Jays, as well as Yimi Garcia, and a few other pieces here. I do like what Seattle managed to accomplish this trading season. They locked in Randy Arozarena, who has started to heat up after a season-long slump, and they didn't have to give up the entire farm for him. They also got a great late-inning reliever in Yimi Garcia from the Jays, at a little bit of an overpay, and also a solid contact bat in Justin Turner. Now, I don't know if that's going to be enough to book their ticket to the playoffs, but I think they're going to be an interesting team to watch, and for at least this list here, I'm going to give them a B+. Moving on to the Texas Rangers, they got Walter Pennington, Andrew Chafin, Carlson Kelly, Robbie Grossman, and Josh Milleris. They really didn't do much of note here outside of picking up a backup catcher. I think the thought here is that they've got a lot of impact players that have just returned or are soon returning to the lineup, and they're going to see how that pans out and stuff here for them. So at least for the trade deadline, I'm going to give them a C. Let's go to the Atlanta Braves. They picked up Jorge Soler, Luke Jackson, Zach Short, and Jimmy Herget. Solaire's going to give the Braves another impact power bat in their lineup, which is going to be great if the other bats were performing up to par. If this offense happens to catch fire, then this could be one of the best offensive teams in the majors again, even without Ronald Acuna Jr. Michael Harris should be returning to the lineup before the end of August, which is going to give the Braves another impact bat to use. For the trade deadline, I'm going to give them a B-. Moving on to the Marlins, they got a massive haul here. Just going through the list, I mean, there's a ton of really good prospects. Between the Rays and the Marlins, there is so much movement happening on trade day. It was no surprise that the Marlins was going to be sellers, but even so, they were able to get a great haul of prospects in Robbie Snelling, Connor Norby, Augustin Ramirez, Davison De Los Santos, who is crushing it in AAA, by the way, along with Adam Mazur, Dylan Head, Jared Cerna, and Graham Pauley. For those counting, that's 8 new prospects that actually make up the Marlins' top 12 prospects in their organization. Looks like the future might finally be bright in Florida. And for that, I give them an A+. Let's move on to the Mets. They ended up getting Jesse Winker, Paul Blackburn, Ryan Stanek, and a bunch of other guys here. With Kodai Senga likely done for the season, there was buzz that the Mets were going to be in on the hunt for a starter to fill the gap. They got Paul Blackburn, which isn't really the answer, but at least he's going to chew up some innings. They did a little better getting an overachieving bat in Jesse Winker and a solid reliever in Ryan Stanek. I'm going to give them a C+ for. Moving on, we got Philadelphia. They got Carlos Estevez, Austin Hayes, Tanner Banks, Seth Johnson. A couple of really nice names here. Looks like the Phillies kind of did exactly what they needed to do. They got that great bat in Austin Hayes and a back-end arm in Carlos Estevez. With Hayes, the Phillies is going to get someone who's going to be a nightmare for southpaws, and Estevez is putting together a career season, and he should be in the mix for saves on the team. The deadline did happen to prune a little bit of their prospect pool, though. But for the deadline, they're going to get an A-. Let's go to Washington. They got Alex Clemmie, Rafa Ramirez Jr., Jose Tena, Tyler Stewart, Caden Wallace, and a 39th pick in the MLB draft, which happens to be Caleb Lomavita. They did okay based on what they had given up, though I'm not too sure if they couldn't have gotten more in return. Caden Wallace is a nice get, as is Alex Clemmie, but I think there was more in Lane Thomas's bat and Hunter Harvey's arm that could have been able to extract a little extra from both the Guardians and the Royals in those trades. But overall, I'm going to give them a B. Moving on to the Chicago Cubs, they got Isaac Paredes from the Rays, Benjamin Coles from the Yankees, Nate Pearson from the Blue Jays. A couple of nice names here. I really do like the additions of Paredes and Pearson. I think that both should be able to contribute immediately. I don't mind the swap of Paredes for Morel, as Paredes is an improvement on defense, where Morel has a slight advantage at the plate. These deals should keep the Cubs afloat in the NL wildcard ways. I'm going to give them a grade of B. Now let's go to Cincinnati. They got Jacob Junis, Joey Wiemer, Ovis Portes, and Ty France. Not bad. They're kind of picking their spot, though, on when they want to fully unleash their dream team. But it doesn't look like it's going to be this year for Cincinnati. But that's okay. With their young, dynamic core, they could see the same success at the plate as the Orioles next season, with everyone, of course, healthy and back in the fold. But they are going to need another lights-out pitcher besides Green and Lodolo to truly make an impact. For the trade deadline, though, they're going to get a C. Let's go to Milwaukee. They picked up Frankie Montas, Aaron Savali, Nick Mears, Dallas Keuchel, and Casey Martin. The Brewers went ahead and picked up two back end of the rotation starters in Frankie Montas and Aaron Savali. Montas might have a little more upside, but neither were incredibly noteworthy. The Brewers already have a strong core, so they really didn't need to bulk up at the deadline. Based on the moves that they did, though, I'll give them a B-. Moving on to Pittsburgh, they got Jalen Beeks, Josh Walker, Brian De La Cruz, Nick York, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, and a couple other pieces there. It kind of feels like there's too many southpaws in the bullpen, not enough impact bats in the lineup. That's how I got the feel here from this from the trade deadline. The Pirates have a promising young core, but I don't think they really did enough to move the needle in the competitive NL Central. I do like Nick York, though. I think he's going to be an interesting piece on the infield for the Pirates when his time comes. As for the grade, they're going to get a B-. Moving on to the Cardinals, they got Eric Fetty from the White Sox. Tommy Pham came from them as well. And they also got Sean Armstrong. The Cardinals actually did very well in prying Eric Fetty and Tommy Pham, but they may have given away Dylan Carlson, though, for peanuts. As a Jays fan, I was hoping that he'd make his way up north, but he now might be set for some serious playing time in the Rays outfield. I'm going to give the Cardinals, though, a B. Moving on to the Arizona Diamondbacks, they picked up A.J. Puck, Dylan Floro, Josh Bell, and Matt Bowman. Picking up the power lefty for your bullpen is always a good idea, but it did come at a great cost. As kind of mentioned before, Davison De Los Santos has been putting together arguably the best season in the minors to date. Josh Bell is a savvy pickup as the team waits on Christian Walker's injury report. As for the trade deadline moves they're going to get a B-. Let's go to Colorado. They picked up Luis Peralta, Bradley Blaylock, Yohanner Herrera, Andrea Lentiga, and Jorge Mendez. Honestly, there's not much to see here. Jalen Beeks is probably the biggest name, and he actually got traded away from Colorado to the Pirates, so really moving on. Colorado, D. Let's go to the Dodgers. They picked up Jack Flaherty, Tommy Edman, Oliver Gonzalez, Michael Kopech, Ahmed Rosario, Kevin Kiermaier, Kevin Biggio, and Moises Bolivar. They did actually pretty well here. They fleeced the Tigers and got Jack Flaherty for almost nothing. They also shored up super utility men Tommy Edman and Ahmed Rosario, which is going to help plug some holes on their injury-depleted squad. Michael Kopech might be the Dodgers' next big project, and if they can get him right, he may end up closing for the team before the year is up. They're going to get a B+ here for the trade deadline. Moving on, we got the San Diego Padres. They got Tanner Scott, Brian Hoeing, Jason Adams, Luis Ariz, of course, is a little earlier on, Martin Perez, and Brandon Lockridge. They did pretty well. They doubled down on their season, picking up Luis Ariz earlier, and of course, Tanner Scott and Jason Adams are huge pieces that they added prior to the deadline. It is a shame that they couldn't stop Juan Soto from making his way to the Bronx before the year started, but the Padres have the assets on the field to make a solid postseason run nonetheless. They're going to get an A for the trade deadline. Let's go to the San Francisco Giants. They got Tyler Matzek, Sabin Ceballos, Mark Hanna, Alex Young. You know, Mark Hanna, not really the answer for a up-and-coming team looking to make the playoffs. Alex Young, also not the answer. Tyler Matzek is kind of nice, but he's not moving the needle for me either. In a National League that is as competitive as it is this year, they needed to make a bigger move to punch their ticket to the playoffs, and really this wasn't it. For me, they get a D. And that's going to do it here for this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like on the video, and of course, subscribe to the channel for more content like this. I'm going to sign off for now, and I will catch you guys on the next episode.